So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I will introduce myself, and then we're going to have Lisa Mumper, one of the other advisors, close us out here this evening. For those that I don't know, my name is Luke Kraft. I am one of the partners here at WDS. I am a certified financial planner, accredited investment fiduciary, and a chartered alternative investment analyst. Married, 3 kids, born and raised here in Wisconsin, proud alum of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Left for 12 years, 3 kids later, moved back here to the Milwaukee area, and proud to be hosting our Next Gen event here tonight. I am also the incoming president of the Financial Planning Association of Wisconsin, so I think that was a good reason for me to do tonight's event. In the last couple of years, I have been the pro bono chair of FPA of Wisconsin and done a lot of work with teen financial literacy and some of the topics we're going to talk about tonight. So my plan here tonight, given the audience, is kind of keep this short and sweet, but really inspire you on your journey, right? Wherever you're at. We have folks that are teenagers, and we have folks that are in their 20s, 30s, and beyond. So we're going to try and give, some good next gen advice, some recommendations, just from a where to get started and an educational standpoint, trying to hit all of those audiences. So if something might be a little bit too simple for you, give it some time, and we'll try to address the needs of everyone in the audience. I did want to say that we are going to do a Q&A here at the end of the session tonight. We're going to do that via the chat function. For those that are familiar with Zoom, pretty easy to just type in a question, and then Lisa will kind of moderate that at the end. We did have some questions pre-submitted, so I'll start with those, and then we'll go to the chat, and any questions that you have, I will address at the end. So to get started, I just want to see if the chat function is working. For those that are familiar, if you can just type in an emoji, your favorite money emoji to get us started, to let me know that function is working, that'd be great. And then we'll go ahead and get started on our first concept of the night. All right, I got a little money bags there, a little thumbs up. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Carl. Good to see you. So I'm going to share my screen. And I am going to start with 2 quotes. 2 quotes from a face and a name everyone should know, Albert Einstein. And to get started tonight, we're going to talk about compound interest and the reason, why that's so important. So Albert tells us compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. So we're going to try and figure out, you're really focused on understanding it tonight, so we can help you earn it and hopefully try to avoid you from paying it. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. The other quote from Albert, kind of sum this up, is also when talking about compound interest, he described it as, one of the most powerful forces in the world. So what is compound interest and what does that look like? Well, in order to really show you, we're going to use a program, Money Guide Pro, that we use for financial planning purposes, and one of their tools called systematic investing. And the reason we're going to use this is we're going to show you the numbers of the benefit of time. And really, when you start talking about compound interest, it's doing the right thing over and over, right? Budgeting, investing, doing the right things financially to win, succeed long term. And that's what we're encouraging you and all of our next gen investors to do on a regular basis, right? Get started, do it consistently over the long period of time. And that's where you're going to see the power of compound interest. And if you talk to any successful investor, grandparent, someone who's been doing this for a while, they'll tell you, it may have started out as dollars and cents, but if you do it long enough, consistent enough, you'll see the fruits of your labor. So we're going to start off with an example, right? We're going to say that you are 45 years old and that you would like to retire at age 65, okay? We're going to assume not everyone here is from Wisconsin, but we're going to assume that we're from Wisconsin and that we're going to get an 8%, hypothetical return, right? That's not a guarantee. Obviously, returns can be more than that, less than that. On average, we're going to just assume for tonight our return, our real rate of return, hypothetical, is 8%. Then we want to say, okay, how do I retire with $1 million? What would I have to save on a monthly basis in order to get $1 million? If you want to play along, type in the chat what you think that number will be. $1 million at age 45. I'm going to retire in 20 years. If I want to save $1 million with an 8% rate of return, how much do I have to save per month? Type it in, give it a guess. Oh, I got to select marital status. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to say no, we are not married. Obviously, if there's two people, this conversation, these numbers get even better. But we're going to go ahead and look at the numbers. Starting number that we're going to look at here tonight to kind of highlight the power of compound interest is 1698. And I want you to remember that number. So what this is telling us is that if today I'm 45 and I'm trying to figure out how I can become a millionaire and retire with $1 million, I need to, within a tax-deferred product, an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, save approximately $1,698, okay, which is, a pretty decent sum of money. Now, a lot of folks, getting started at 45, you might say you're kind of behind the 8 ball. The question is, okay, that's great. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can't. Maybe I got to look at some other options. But in order to demonstrate the power of compound interest, we want to now look at, okay, what if I start a little bit earlier? What if I were to start saving at age 35? So I'm going to go back. And I want to, if you want to, play along, tell me if that number is going to be higher or lower. Am I going to have to save more or less if I'm saving for 30 years as opposed to 20? Okay, pretty simple answer. Most of you are going to get it. But that number is going to be less, right? Just by starting 10 years sooner, in order to get to $1 million, instead of having to save $1,698, okay, per month for that 20-year period, if I started 10 years earlier and just saved within a tax-deferred product like a 401k or an IRA, I would only have to save $671 in order to become a millionaire by the time that I retire, right? What's the difference in that $1,000? Very simply put, it's the power of compound interest. Now, we have some younger folks on the call, so I'm going to change this one last time. I'm going to look at this and say, hey, what if I just graduated? What if I just got a job and I want to retire at 65? I'm 25 years old. I just got my first job, trying to figure out life, trying to figure out a budget and what that means in retirement and all of that. How much would I have to save in order to be a millionaire by the time I retire, right? Now that's a 40-year working, timeline, right? So the numbers should get even smaller, right? And this is where, again, the power of compound interest, why we want to encourage people to get started as soon as possible, right? The advantage that the next gen has is time. Being younger, you have a longer time horizon. So we look at that number, and if somebody starts at age 25 as opposed to age 35, as opposed to age 45, you can see that the number gets even better, right? $286, right? That's a couple Starbucks, a couple lunches. If you're able to save $286 per month starting at age 25, and that's not assuming that you're increasing that at all. Chances are, as you get older, you get a raise, you get more money coming in, you can actually increase that along the way. But if you just did that, right, $286 starting at age 25, you'd be very easily become a millionaire by the time you would retire at age 65. And that's simply the power of compound interest. So it's all about time, doing the right things consistently, letting that compound interest work for you, right? That interest is earning interest, and then it compounds on itself. But it's a slow and steady process, right? And you have to get started. The sooner you get started, the better. Okay. Now, one last thing to kind of close out this topic, to really drive this home. What I wanted to do was just say, okay, what if we started at age 25 and we invested that original amount that we talked about, $1698. Let's say I didn't have any student loans, I got out of college, and I had some extra margin in my budget, just a hypothetical. Let's say I was able to throw $1,698 into a tax-deferred account for the next 40 years. Anybody want to guess what that would grow to? Again, we're assuming an 8% interest return, again, hypothetical. But what I want to show you, again, the power of compound interest, plugging those numbers in, kind of changing this around a little bit, is that we get a whopping 5.9 million. Now that might not be doable, right? $1,600 is a lot of money, but what it shows you is that the earlier you get started, the more every dollar that you can save, put away, invest, and let that compound on itself, the better off you're going to be. Okay. So that's the power of compound interest. That's where we want to get started tonight. Okay. Any questions on that, please follow up with us. Truly, truly important. The next thing that I wanted to go through with you, and one of the ways to, get started on this, can you guys see my screen all right? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the budgeting. So one of the ways that you get started on this is through managing your assets appropriately, right? Whether you're starting out, whether you're already been doing this for a while, whether in your 30s, 40s, or wherever you may be, figuring out your personal budget, making sure that you have margin to do that saving is critical. So this can get, doing this can kind of get, challenging. There's going to be some tough choices that you're going to have to make with how you manage your assets. And if you really want to see that compounding effect, right, you have to make good financial decisions consistently over a long period of time. And that's where the simple stuff like budgeting becomes so important. So again, I'm gonna start pretty basic, and then we'll get more we'll get into some advanced stuff as we progress. But the question you have to ask yourself just to start is, hey, are we living paycheck to paycheck? And unfortunately, a lot of Americans are, due to poor financial decisions or whatever the circumstances may be. We want to try and move beyond that and give you some good advice to put yourself in the best possible position, financially. So what can we do? Can we put off, purchases? What options do we have? And, if the answer is yes to some of that stuff, you really have two options. One is, hey, do we take the risky approach, just hope and pray? Do we play the lottery? Do we just get another credit card? Those are all what we would describe as not ideal, kind of the risky approach. But then the better approach, you might say, is, hey, do we really give a hard look at what we're doing, right? Do we evaluate our spending? Do we put a plan together? Do we set goals, right? Do we develop a budget and a spending plan. And if you can do that, right, you're going to succeed financially, right? Most people just don't put pen to paper. They don't do that work. But let's talk about this for a second. What is a budget? Okay, people throw that term around. I'm going to assume that you don't know what it is. Basically, it's the first step in financial planning, right? Putting a budget together just helps us get an idea of the inflows and the outflows of your personal financial situation, right? What is your income, right? Whether it's a paycheck, a pension, Social Security, whatever it may be, versus what are you spending, right? What's your monthly expenses? And it's going to vary, of course, month to month. But the question becomes, are you spending more than you are bringing in? And if you do that consistently, right, you're never going to win financially. And that's really where we've got to work with next gen investors to get, consistent and really good at, earning more than you're spending, right? Having that margin. So, the other part of that is then having a plan. I just had a problem with my water softener at my house. Stuff like that is going to happen to you. If it hasn't, it will, right? Whether it's a tire on your car or whatever it may be, we got to have a plan for that, right? We got to have some money set aside for that. So income, money coming in, right? Most of you, that's going to be a salary. Might be multiple salaries, might be a side gig, might be making stuff on Etsy and selling it online. For some of you, it might be investments, right? Getting started. What does that investment look like? It might be some rental properties. For those that are in retirement or near retirement, that may also include Social Security, pensions, all of that. That is all considered your income, right? That's kind of your top line number. What we want to then look at is, okay, what more importantly, compare that to our expenses. And really, we want to break these down into two different subsets, okay? So first is your variable, right? Your non-monthly. And then second is going to be your fixed, right? We know what these are going to be. These are consistent. It's going to start with housing in some situations, your rent, food, utilities, the most important stuff, right? This is stuff we know we have to pay. But then your variable stuff is going to be, okay, how often are we eating out, right? How often are we getting coffee at Starbucks? What are we doing for clothes, gifts, entertainment, travel, etc.? And then we got to obviously compare the two, right? So first things first, let's calculate the income and then calculate the expenses. So what do you got to do? You got to put in the time, put pen to paper, grab your pay stub, grab your checkbook, grab your bank statements, and let's do the analysis, right? Assign all your income, add it up, right? That's going to be our top line kind of revenue. And then secondly, evaluate all your expenses, both the fixed and the discretionary. Now, if your expenses are higher than your income, you have to make some tough choices, right? If you want to succeed financially. And that's where, some people just aren't willing to make those sacrifices, okay? What can you do? Well, we can increase our income, right? We can get a second job. We can get a hobby. We can get a better job. We can increase our income somehow, right? We can ask for a raise. We can get part-time work. There's a lot of different things that we can do. Or we can also decrease our spending. So looking at those non-essential expenses, what subscriptions do we have? How often are we eating out? Where are we spending our money that's putting us in this financial position? And then trying to control those monthly expenses as much as possible, right? So again, these are tough conversations for the next generation, for younger folks. This is really where it comes down to, how important is this for you? If it's really important and you're motivated, you're going to do this stuff, right? This is going to be something that comes easy to you. For other folks, it's not as important, and that's okay. We're not judging. We just want to encourage as much as possible. So, trimming expenses. We want to cut out some of those non-essentials, right? And you know what those are. If we have 6 subscriptions can we trim that down to 2, maybe 1? If we're eating out, 6, 7, 10 times a week, can we trim that down to 1 or 2? Um, Impulse spending. If we're on Amazon and we have box after box being delivered to our home, maybe we delete that app and just use it as needed on occasion. And then finally, trying to fix lower costs, right? Are we living in an apartment that maybe we can't afford, right? Do we look for a different place to lower that fixed expense? All of these things are just simple steps on how to trim that budget. Talked about this, services we don't need. A lot of people have been cutting the cord, right? Getting away from just paying for cable, late fees and over the limits. These are simple things, right? Paying your bills on time, trying to create some margin, avoiding those late fees. It's just dollars and cents out of the window. Bank charges. That's where doing this exercise, doing this consistently can help reduce those costs. And then, the expenses that vary from month to month. Okay. How can we save some money? Right. This is, we're shopping, food costs, as we're all aware, have gone up over the last couple of years. Where can we get the best bang for our buck? How does it make the most sense shopping for food, clothing? Can we carpool? Can we reduce on, what we're spending on gas? Can we eat out less? Is our thermostat, most people don't think about this, but our energy bill, are we, setting it at, 85, because we got to be super warm? Or during the summer, are we setting it, at 60 or something where it's always running? These are little things, but they can add up to make such a big difference. This is a big one, right? Packing a lunch. Most people don't do the math. They don't add it up. But if we spend, $7 a day, I don't know where you can find lunch these days for $7. We could probably double, maybe even triple this number. But just give you an example, if we eat out every day for 50 weeks, we're talking about $1,700 that can, again, go to help you in your long-term investment goals. You can see if you do it 3 days, it's $1,000. If you do it just 1 day a week, it's 350. So give that some thought. Again, these are all just ideas, hopefully motivation to help you. If you're not in this situation yet, I know we have a broad audience. If you're a teenager, right, these are all tidbits for you to start thinking about when you do get that full-time job, when you're out on your own. How can you manage your assets, right? Mom and dad are out of the equation, your guardian's out of the equation. What do we do? How do we manage our own money? And then finally, lowering our fixed expenses, right? So I talked about this. Housing costs, always going to be one of your largest expenses. Whether you're, just getting started or you've been around a long time, housing costs, always going to be up there. Reducing your utility bill, renegotiating or paying off loans. That's one of our questions that we're going to talk about in the Q&A. And then also shopping for insurance coverage, shopping for, cheaper options as it relates to some of those fixed expenses. All in all, I don't want to say that this is going to be easy, because it's not, right? Some of this is going to be hard. And like anything in life, right? Anything worth doing is doing well. And that's the same when it comes to your financial, well-being and your long-term financial success. So I just challenge you and encourage you to make those hard decisions, whether it means, cutting up the credit cards if you're using them, or leaving them at home in some cases. Avoid the app, the Amazon app, if that's your, where you're spending most of your money, or staying out of the stores, eating at home. Just try to fight some of those impulses, right? Put the budget together, identify your income versus your expenses, and then just try to win month in and month out. For some of us, debt may be an issue, right? Maybe you saw the effects of this and all of a sudden, boom, debt had become a problem, whether it's credit card debt or other debt. We want to encourage you that you do have control, and all we can do right now is just say, okay, hey, this is where we're at today. What steps can we do moving forward, right? So we want to pay off that debt, right? We want to start with some of the highest, the debt where you're paying the most in interest, right? 28, 29% interest on some of these credit cards. And then we want to avoid using debt moving forward, right? We want to put that monthly budget together. We want to spend less than we make. We want to start to build up that emergency fund first, and then start to invest and do some other things that we'll talk about. But we want to make our payments on time. We want to do the simple things right, consistently, and that's where it's going to pay off. Okay. So tonight is about encouraging you to do that, right? Budgeting, it's not fancy, right? It doesn't get all the publicity. You're not going to see a TikTok on it or, roll across Instagram. But if you want to win financially, right, this is one critical thing you have to be able to do well. Okay. So include some savings in your budget, right? If you have margin, if you're earning $2,000 a month and you're spending $1,000, just as a simple example, that's $1,000 that you get to choose what to do with, right? If you have that dialed in, set some goals, start saving some of those dollars, put it aside, right? Develop a kind of an emergency fund, a nest egg that you can kind of dip into as life happens, and then we can kind of go from there. The easiest way to do this is to pay yourself first. So once you get this all in order, once you figure out these numbers and where you're at, pay yourself first. So before you pay any other bills, right, whether you're doing it automatically at work, that's highly recommended. That way you don't even see the dollars. For some of our younger folks on the call tonight, before you get your first paycheck, set up your savings, right? If you're not receiving it, you won't figure out how to spend it, right? So if you can automatically have it deducted, do that from day one. Highly recommended. And then build that emergency fund, right? We know life's going to happen. It happened to me this week. I was without water for a good day and a half. Water softener, had some problems. Couldn't shower, couldn't use any water. It's going to happen to you. Develop that emergency fund, put some money away, and then we can start investing and thinking about the long term. So just to recap, again, simple things done right over a long period of time can make a huge difference, right? And that's what we want to encourage tonight. So gather your income, figure out what that looks like. If it's not where you want it to be, look at some ways to increase it, right? Look at your expenses, figure out the fixed versus the variable, right? And really cut where you can. And then, once you put a plan together, it's about doing it consistently. So it's kind of like dieting, right? It's like you can have one good day, but then if you have a inconsistent approach, if you're bad the next, right, it's not going to pay off. You have to be able to do it consistently. And that's what we want to encourage you to do tonight. So with that, I'm going to then lastly move on to our Money Path program. Now, I'm excited to talk about Money Path. I mentioned my involvement with FPA of Wisconsin, being the pro bono chair, done a ton of work with Secure Futures. They are focused on teen financial literacy. I've taught in numerous high schools throughout the Milwaukee area. This is some great content, right? I'm going to take about 10, 15 minutes to go through it with you. What I'm excited to share is that in speaking with their CEO, Brenda Campbell, I was able to get a class code just for WDS clients and their friends and families. Anyone on this call. That class code, so the reason I bring that up is that everyone on this call, or anyone that listens to it, we're going to allow you access to this Money Path app. And what we want to encourage is for you to go onto the website. So let me just start there. The website I want you to write down, and we can send this out as follow-up as well, is Money Path app. So money, P-A-T-H, path, and then app.org. And you're going to get to this screen, okay? Now, in order to use a program, you have to have a class code, and you have to register your account. Now, the cool thing is once I give you the code, okay, I'm just going to type that in here, and then you're going to create your own account, okay? Now, again, we'll probably send this out and provide this for you. I'll put it in the chat once we get into the Q&A. But the class code for tonight is 826-0159. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. You don't have to do it this second, but I want you to write this down. And this is a resource that you can use forever, for as long as you want. That code again, 826-0159. Once you hit that, you're going to be able to register your own account at MoneyPath app and do what we're going to do here in the next, call it 10 minutes. Okay. Now, I've used this for a number of different classes. So I'm going to have a bunch of different paths already in place. For the sake of tonight, I'm going to hit add a new path. Okay. And so this is what you can do. This is the beauty of this program. And the reason I love it so much is it's going to give us the financial ramifications of what we decide to do in life, right? Now, some of us may go to college. Some of us may join the workforce. I have a nephew in the armed services. We got a lot of different choices that we can make, okay? But I'm just going to give you one example, and then you can go back in, create your own account, and then see how it works for you. So we're going to start with, hey, I'm just going to, pretend I'm back in high school. Okay, so I'm just going to click high school and then hit next. And that's pretty much, as difficult as it's going to get in using this program. From here, we're going to decide, hey, what are we going to do? You may not know if you're a teenager in high school. I sure didn't know. It took a while to figure it out. But you got a lot of different choices to make. And that's the beauty of this program, is you can see all of them, right? You can dive into this. You can see, hey, if I went into the military, hey, if I did an apprenticeship, hey, if I go to college, what does that look like? Okay. So and some of you may be in the workforce, right? You may not be a teenager. You might be in the workforce and you just want to say, hey, what does that look like for me? Well, you can use this program too and see all the financial ramifications of your decisions based on where you go to work. So I'm just going to choose an option that I took, right? I decided to go to school, college. I got a bachelor's degree, so I'm just going to hit that. Obviously, there's associate's degree and a bunch of other things that you can do. I'm going to transfer options. You can start at a community college. You can then go to transfer from there. I'm going to just say, hey, I'm going to stay where I'm at, do that for 4 years. And then I am going to type in what I'm interested in. So I was a business major. We're going to give this a second. It looks like it's just loading. Business. Let me see if I. All right, here we go. Easier way to do this is to choose one that I've already done. So I'm going to go back. Same decisions, right? Started in high school, went to college, bachelor's degree, do not plan to transfer. And then I chose business. And you may not know, right? You may not know what you want to study. And that's the beauty of it, right? You can create 10 different paths, figure out what you want to do. I'm going to choose business and just kind of go down this road. Okay. And let's say I want to be an accountant. I want to be a CPA. This program takes the national average for that major and puts it into here. And so you can see that if I get an accounting and finance degree, the average starting salary nationally, right? So this is going to include high-end markets, big markets like LA, New York, and then everything in between, right? It's an average. Is 54,809. 60% employed with 28% needing continuing education, okay? So we're going to pick that and then just click next. Now, I am a Wisconsin grad. See if I can pull this up. I'm just going to hit Madison. And then it's going to pull up some options, right? So if I'm a Wisconsin resident and I'm going to a Wisconsin school, I'm going to hit in-state. If I'm going out of state, you know, obviously Minnesota has reciprocity. If I'm going to Illinois or Iowa, it's going to be out of state, right? And that's obviously going to change what tuition is going to look like. And that's the point of doing this exercise. For the sake of tonight, I'm just going to choose in-state. I'm going to stay off campus, and I'm going to take 8 semesters. Right now, I actually took 2 more than that. I was a 5-year student. Enjoyed my time, double majored, studied abroad. But that increased my cost, and you can do that too, right? You can see what that's going to look like. Now, you may not know some of this information, but it's going to start to ask you about, hey, what funding sources do I have? Now, if you're doing with this with mom and dad and someone that can help you out, you can either say, hey, I don't know, right? I didn't really have an idea. Or you can start to plug in the numbers. And then again, you click, hit next. Okay. GI Bill, scholarships, some of this you may not know. Some of this you may want to fill in, add another scholarship, right? How are we going to pay for school? Parents, are you going to set aside any money on your own? You know, these are questions that you can start to ask. And again, you may not know this all right away. I had a summer job. Some folks work during the school, you know, during the semester. This is where you start to kind of plug and play with that. You know, what can I save? I had one summer I did foundation, insulation, and repair, and it was, you know, just a grueling job, but it paid well, and I enjoyed my time. I was able to save some of those dollars, right? So I forget exactly what I made, but let's just plug in 40 hours a week during the summer. I'm making $10 an hour, you know, before taxes, that's $4,800. Take out some taxes. I got 4,300. I'm going to spend some of it naturally, but if I can take 1,000 of that and put it towards, you know, helping out with expenses, it's going to help out. So that's what I chose to do. So now the program starts to add up some of these financial decisions, right? What does it look like? How does it work? Well, if I didn't have, you know, any help, right, and I got to take out student loans, it's telling me right now I got to take out a 4-year loan of $52,000. Okay, annually it's about 13 because I did get some help. It's just on average, you know, what schools are able to help out with. Well, 52,000, you know, for 4 years, I'm going to pay $14,000 in interest, right? Same power of compound interest, but now it's going the other way, right? It's working against us. So total, we're talking about $66,000 in student loan debt as I walk out of school, okay? Monthly payment based on a 10-year repayment plan, $553. It's going to be a big chunk of my budget, okay? But this kind of sums it up, and we can play with this. If you're in the process or you've already made some decisions, you can get really granular and plug in exactly your numbers. And then next, we're going to talk about, okay, starting salary $54,000 a year. That's $4,500 a month. Let's break that down. We're going to take out taxes, right? That leaves me a net income of $3,600. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into budgeting, right? We talked about this already. This program is going to force us to zero out our monthly budget. So we know right now we got $2,600 that we need to plug in, right? It automatically forces us to pay our student loan. And then we're going to have some options here for an emergency fund and then for retirement. So what are we going to do here? Let's just say we do $100 for food and clothing, for entertainment. I'm going to skimp a little bit. I'm only going to do 50. Groceries, they're a little bit more expensive. Can I get by on 300? That includes dining out. Housing and rent, I'm going to say I'm going to live with somebody and it's going to be $1,000. Healthcare, I'm going to say 150. Housing for, we're going to buy some stuff. So let's say 150 for that a month. I'm going to need transportation. I'm going to put 500 in for that. Personal care, $100. Other, let's say 150. That leaves me with about $184. Okay. Now, again, this is 247 going towards an emergency fund. So I'm paying myself first, and then $154 towards retirement. Okay. It won't let you hit next. Important point. It will not let you hit next until you zero out your budget, until this says 0. Okay. So I'm going to take this 184 and I'm going to throw it into my retirement. Okay. So let's just do 325 and see where we get. All right. We got $13, 340. It's going to be a couple dollars over, 338. Okay. So now once you zero it out, you hit next, and then boom, we have our emergency fund, our down payment. You're going to see where some of these goals start to come into play in timeline. Do you want to save for a house, right? Do we want to buy a car? And then lastly, let's talk about, going back to our compound interest conversation. It's going to show us what retirement's going to look like. How do we, that 300 some bucks that we set aside a month, what does that look like? And you can mess with the numbers. You can go change that out. It's going to start slow. It's going to feel like you haven't done much. And then all of a sudden you get to this age, right, where you're 30 years in and you're going to have this, that compound interest start to really kick in, right? Where you go from, 1.2 million to all of a sudden, boom, 1.8 million in 5 years. So that's a little bit about Money Path, right? I know we're kind of 43 minutes in already this evening, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but everyone on this call is going to get access to it. That class code again is 826-0159. So go to the Money Path app and then register, right? So username and password, type in an email, password, and then you'll be able to do this yourself. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close with a couple questions. Lisa, if you got any, please type them into the chat. I know we got the chat messages working. I'm going to go through the first couple questions, and then we'll have Lisa close out and answer that we get any questions that we get in chat. So first one we got pre-submitted: Roth IRA versus traditional IRA. Okay, good question. Traditional IRAs is tax deferred. So we can get a tax deduction, right? It reduces our taxable income by making a contribution into a traditional IRA. It grows tax deferred, but then once we take that money out, we're paying taxes. A Roth IRA, however, right? We use after-tax money, right? We then invest it. We make a contribution into the Roth IRA. We don't get a deduction, but then that money grows tax-free. And then when we take it out, it also comes out tax-free. Love Roth IRAs, especially for next-gen investors. Highly, we really love talking about those and bringing those up to clients. Want to encourage folks to get as much money into that bucket as possible. Next question we had: paying off student loan debt versus contributing to a 401k. Now, there's a couple different trains of thought here, and even within WDS, we might argue a couple different ways to go about this. From my perspective, my opinion is, we want to attack student loan debt and we want to get that paid off. That's a priority, right? we saw that in my secure futures example, I was paying $553 a month, right? We want to be paying more than that and get that student loan paid off. But if I go to work and I'm 25 and my employer is going to match me, give me free money up to 3%, 5%, whatever the number may be, we want to at least start, from my opinion, start contributing to that 401k to get the match, right? So we want to automate that. We want to get the match. And then we want to use every other dollar we can to then pay off the student loan debt, right? Again, a couple different ways to go about that. But if you're getting a match, take advantage of the time element, the free money, contribute into your 401k to get the match up to whatever you can, 3%, whatever that number is, and then use every other dollar you can to pay off that student loan debt. And then once it's paid off, increase those contributions as much as possible, 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever you can make work. And then lastly, we had a question about best strategy to invest summer work dollars to assist with college expenses. Okay, good question. I'm glad you're thinking about this. I'm going to answer it a little bit different way. If we know that we're going to use assets, if we know we're going to use dollars in the short term, right? If I'm working a summer job and I'm trying to use that money to pay off college expenses, we don't necessarily want to be investing those dollars, right? When we talk about investing with our clients and next gen clients, it's got to be longer term time horizon, right? We got to be 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out. So my point being is that if you are making money during summer and you're going to use those dollars for expenses you have coming up in 6 months, 12 months, whatever it may be, don't invest those dollars. We would say, hey, put it in a good money market account, get it, put it where you can earn some interest, right? You can earn some money on it, but not where it's going to be subject to investment risk, right? Because, investments, they can go up, they can go down, they can go sideways. And if you're going to need those dollars for the short term, we would say take a more conservative approach. So that's all I had for questions. I just, in closing, want to thank all of you for taking your time this evening to join us. Hopefully, we inspired you to take the next best step on wherever you're at in your financial journey, right? If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to your advisor or anyone at WDS. Lisa, if there's any other questions in the chat, I'll address those, or otherwise I'll let you close it out.
Thanks so much, Luke. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So our next event is going to be a market update in January. We'll send clients an email to get you the details on the open registration for that webinar shortly after the new year. But we also welcome feedback from everybody about our events. So please reach out to your advisor or email us at info@wdstrategies.com to let us know how we're doing or other topics that you'd like to see us present about. Again, thanks everybody for joining. We hope to see you at next month's event and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Be well.